Finally, just to wrap this up by talking about all three of these texts together, Wilfred Owen's Disabled and Susan Glaspell's two texts, Trifles and Jury of Her Peers, and thinking about that idea of genre, I just wanted to note again that all of these texts come from approximately the same time period, 1916, 1917. Now, obviously, Owen's text is talking about a pressing international issue, World War I, obviously in a very personal way from the point of view of a soldier who was injured in that war and how that soldier's life has changed now that he's come home injured. And, you know, there's a domestic scene, a domestic drama that's happening in Glaspell's text as well, but they're focusing on an abusive relationship and a murder that happens in a rural setting and how that is investigated. So different subject matter, but from the same period. So that gives us a really interesting snapshot into a few different things happening in the early 20th century. And if we think through the form, again, thinking about the form, we can see that those stories, each one of these has a narrative, but all those narratives are presented in different ways. In the poem, it's a much more brief sense with some really creative use of language, and the form itself creates some challenges to us as readers that we need to maybe decode or to sort of train ourselves to read through to get that meaning. There's much more explanation in the other two texts in terms of the form, but those two forms represent that meaning in really different ways, as we've discussed. So hopefully reading through these three texts gives you a good introduction to the genre, to the form of these different types of texts that we're going to be reading, and helps you to start thinking about what are some of the features that you want to make sure that you're attending to as you read poetry versus drama versus fiction.